Hey guys, welcome to the MotorMarvel Podcast, proudly sponsored by Hard Hat Watches.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, so got a special guest coming on today, talking about some pretty exciting news. So, yeah, what do we got, Sal?
So we got the Miata from SEMA that has been circling the internet, so it's a bit of fakery going on there.
Yep,
Plus a little bit of talk about EVs.
Yeah, a few other exciting topics we've got lined up, so listen up, guys, and stay tuned.
Let's do it.
Hey guys, so today, as we mentioned, we got ourselves a special guest here, so I'd just like to introduce you to Jono.
Hello.
So he's a bit of a resident expert on a few different topics, but probably at the core, he's a motoring enthusiast. So
Absolutely.
obviously like to get someone who's like-minded on the show to have a bit of a chat with us and talk through what's happening in the motoring world. So
Thanks for having me.
yeah, welcome, mate.
Welcome.
So I think we've got our first topic here that we just wanted to delve on. It's probably been around for a little while, Jono, but yeah, look, it's I don't think it's probably going to... Well, there's another slide coming up, but I don't think it's going to save them. But this is pretty exciting. If it is actually all true.
Makes it to production. Yeah, it's a very high output per litre engine. Obviously, the Yaris has got a very small engine with a lot of power, and this would be, I guess, taking it to the next level.
Yeah. Well, the problem is if that's a high output engine, what's the longevity on it?
Yeah, well,
Think of it like that.
They're doing pretty good with them so far. I mean, you're talking about the Yaris and stuff. What sort of power they're getting out of those things at the moment is silly.
Yeah, I think that whole output per litre war really started with the A45 AMG that was making 260 or 280 kilowatts 10 years ago. And, you know, there was a lot of questions about the reliability of those engines at that time.
I think a couple of them caught on fire, didn't they?
I think
Early on.
they've had I think they've had some challenges with reliability, but there's certainly not been the time bomb that I think people, 10 years ago or when the A45 first came out. But people were saying, they're going to last a couple of years and then blow up. But I think for the most part, they've been fairly reliable.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So this is, I guess, an evolution of that. The Yaris, and now assuming this makes it to production, which may or may not.
1.5 litre, what is it? 400 horsepower, 3-cylinder engine. But I wonder what it would sound like. That's the thing. The smaller
Probably like a Yaris.
Yeah, it's not going to sound like a lot. So.
Like the more we downsize the engines, you lose sound. So
Yeah, you do, and I personally don't think the Yarises make a really good sound.
no, I agree with you.
But yeah, they make the power, and the technology's there where they're fairly responsive now, and it seems to be the direction it's going. And I think we should be grateful for any performance-orientated engine that
Absolutely
is released.
agree. Yeah, definitely. Well, look, I think let's move on to the next slide because we've got a bit more to talk about with these guys as well. So.
Yep, and I think what Nick was just saying, I don't think it's going to save them.
Yep.
So like Nick was saying before, guys, Nissan is actually in trouble.
Yeah, it appears to be. Yep.
So they look like they're getting help from Mitsubishi, as we can see. But who knows? We're seeing a lot of car companies going. And like last week, we were talking about Aston Martin. Have you seen that, John?
I know they're not making money.
They're losing over $1 million a day.
Making good cars though.
Making brilliant cars. Yeah, we can agree on that. But they're losing money each day.
Yep.
So that was them.
Yep.
Then we were speaking about how Mercedes, even though we don't know if that's correct completely, is now teaming up with Geely, Chinese automaker.
Yeah.
And Renault that make the 2 litre. It is true.
Yeah.
2 litre turbo motor. So
Chinese engine in entry level Mercedes.
Yeah.
Which I personally am not a fan of.
we were saying the same thing, but Nick was saying that it kind of degrades the brand.
Totally. I mean, at that point, you might as well buy another car, I think. And
why would you buy a European car?
Yeah.
You might as well buy honestly, you might as well buy a GWM or a Haval because it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, I agree. But I think in the case of Nissan, I think it's been a long time since they've made a desirable car. And I think it's just reflective of, times are changing. Manufacturers are having to assess their place in the market. And as we move to a more EV landscape, I think it's going to get more and more challenging for brands to have something that is different from their competitors.
And that's the problem, I think, is you see certain companies that are adapting and doing well, and you've got companies that aren't adapting or aren't adapting quick enough that are falling behind. And I think this is one of the cases.
BMW has recently done a partnership with Toyota on hydrogen power. Because BMW are not going down the realm of EV, which is fine, but they're still making EVs, but they're going with Toyota with hydrogen. And I think, like you just said, Nissan haven't really done anything. They're not doing EVs, they're not doing hydrogen. So what are they doing? They're just...
Where's their place in the market?
Where's their place? They're not really doing... They're not adapting like Nick was saying, and I think this is what's making them fall behind. And I'm pretty sure they've stopped GDR production.
Yeah, but I guess the GDR would be like a small seller in the grand scheme of things.
Of course.
Like it's really the high volume cars would be the ones that would deliver the revenue for the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting time in the car industry. It's Japan sort of came to the mass market in the 70s and revolutionised the way cars were. They brought more features at lower prices.
Yeah.
Then Korea sort of did to Japan what Japan did to the rest of the world. And now China's doing to Korea what Korea did to Japan what Japan did.
That makes sense.
It's happening at a much faster rate now, though. I think Japan had a good probably 30, 40 years at the top.
Yeah.
Korea is probably, around 15 or maybe 20 to 30 now, but now obviously with China.
Do you think it's been the change to the EVs that has kind of given entry to some of these changes?
Definitely.
Because I feel like that's been one of the sort of turning points of where the market is and how things we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah.
Is when EVs started to become a thing, we started to see this transition.
I definitely for China, because China's never been particularly good at building engines. That's the reality of it. They've not got a reputation for building engines. They do have a reputation for building batteries.
Yes.
So obviously the
makes sense.
The transition for them to vertically integrate batteries into car manufacturing is going to give them a competitive edge against Japan and even Korea. But I think Korea's has adapted with the times a little bit. I think Europe's a bit of a mixed bag, but I think Japan's really hasn't adapted well.
And we were talking about that last week, John. So we're talking about how Hyundai has just constantly released great cars. They're just doing a really, really good job. And I know we sound like we're Hyundai fanboys, but they just have, and I've had a lot of them for review. And I recently had the X-Trail, talking about Nissan, and I couldn't justify why you'd buy an X-Trail when you could get a Hyundai, a Kia, like they're much better cars. Like I have the X-Trail, which is supposed to compete with the Tucson. Why wouldn't you buy the Tucson? Tucson's a better car.
I think what Korea have really mastered is they've sort of taken the reliability and Japanese approach to engineering, but then they've also got the European style.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think combining those two things makes a really good package.
Yeah.
And look, and that's what, again, saying about Hyundai, they seem to have done both, right? They got the styling, they got the BMW.
And the performance.
Yeah.
So, do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Well, hopefully...
See what happens with Nissan. and I think Mitsubishi and Honda are in probably a pretty similar boat long term. They'll need to adapt or they won't survive.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I guess when we talk about some high-performance cars, we don't always think about an SUV as a high-performance car. But here we have Lamborghini obviously making theirs and doing it very successfully.
Well, you mean Audi?
Sure, yes, Audi. But look, I think they're leading the charge here, and Sal's got a little bit to say about it. But no, look, there's no doubt here. They're sold out, mate, for 2 years.
I can't justify it. You put that on a hoist, it's all Audi parts underneath Volkswagen. It's not a Lamborghini.
It's obviously successful.
But
people want these cars.
But it's not a Lamborghini. And I recently had the Audi SQ7, and I honestly think it's the best high-performance SUV you can possibly buy because it does everything well. It's very practical. This isn't practical. It's a jacked-up sedan.
Yeah, but I think the Lamborghini buyer is they buy it because of the badge on the front. I mean, my understanding of that platform is it's fundamentally it's a Volkswagen Audi Group platform. It's used in the Cayenne, the RSQ8.
Correct.
Even I think the Bentley Bentayga.
Correct.
It's the same platform, but I guess
they all derive from the RSQ8.
Yeah, they do, and they develop a
body.
They develop a body and an interior but it's to appeal to a certain market.
It's their unique identity, right?
Yeah, exactly. They develop each of one of those platforms to have its identity, and I think I don't know, Lamborghinis for me, they're the sort of cars that I don't want to offend anyone, but it's like when you get rich, you go and buy a Lamborghini. Like I feel like car guys that have it running in their blood. I'm not saying Lamborghini make bad cars because they make some really good cars, SVJ and...
I got a question for you, though. Yeah. Would you buy a Lamborghini over something else?
I would not.
No way in hell.
And neither would I. So I think you've got three guys here who would probably not buy a Lamborghini, but you've got a market here of people that are buying Lamborghini SUVs.
I think Lamborghini lost their personality and who they were and their identity after the Murcielago.
Well, that was about when the Volkswagen Audi...
the transition happened.
They moved to the Volkswagen Audi group. I think objectively their cars have become much more better in terms of reliability.
But does that make them who they are? Because Lamborghinis of the past was stupid for a reason.
Yeah.
Do you know, they had the wings, they had all this... They were flawed. They weren't aerodynamic.
Yeah.
They weren't. But they looked insane.
Yeah.
And that's what they had, and that's what their personality was.
They had a very distinct
Correct.
You need
If we
to
look at the
think about those cars.
Countach, that was the most dominant car in the world with the stupidest aero. None of the aero worked.
Yeah.
But come on, everyone had that on their wall.
It's an iconic car,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Everyone wanted one, right?
Yeah, correct. And now, like Jay was saying, I don't think any motoring enthusiast is really like, I want a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think there's certain models which I really like. I think the SVJ, there's the
STO.
Superleggera, the STO. There's certainly certain models which appeal to me, but I think like in terms of comparing a Huracan against an equivalent Ferrari or Porsche, I'm always going to take a 488 or a GT3. Over
100%.
I've been saying this to Sal, because Sal's always like, oh, who's buying these, whatever. But it's the people who probably already got a Porsche. They've already got something as a daily fun car, and they want a car that's
they're
fast
obnoxious.
and cool.
They're almost like the Harley Davidson of the car. But I also think it's like someone made a couple of million on Bitcoin. They go and buy a Lambo. Like it's kind of the reputation.
It is so true. It's like I made it on Bitcoin to buy. We're Lambo.
But they're not a car guy. Like they just the Lambo is loud. It's obnoxious. Everyone
knows you've got a Lamborghini.
Yeah. But so that's on Lambo. They're killing it in sales of the Euros.
I'm not surprised because I think the G-Wagon was probably the first one that shocked me that sort of fits in this category.
Yeah.
To me, a G-Wagon's quite agricultural and not particularly
100%,
appealing.
thank you.
But people love them, and for me, I had to go, well, it wouldn't be what I'd buy.
Yeah.
Because I think like
But they're everywhere,
a Cayenne is a much better built car.
Yeah.
And it's not a tractor that's had a V8 pumped in it. But I mean, that's what the G-Wagon was really. It was like a industrial.
It was a military car.
Yeah.
It was actually a military car that they grabbed and then they gave it to AMG, and AMG gave it sports suspension originally and a V8 engine, and I drove it. I had driven one for 6 months at that time. I was working for someone, and I was able to drive the car for a very extended long period of time, and I hated every minute of it. You would get on the highway and all it would sound like is constant air because it was like a box on wheels.
Yeah.
The aerodynamics was crap, and it rolled in the corners. It
You
was
know what? People love them.
I know.
People love them, and
They're
credit to
very-
Mercedes. I would have thought it would be a formula
successful.
that wouldn't work, but it did.
Yeah.
It did.
And it's obviously the same for the Urus.
Yeah. All right, so moving on.
All right, so we've got Mazda here with a very promising thing.
Yeah, look, I think, everyone thinks Mazdas, rotaries,
Yeah.
there's always a bit of that in the blood, I think, for a lot of people, with some iconic cars from back when we were a bit younger. And looks like a bit of news here that we might be getting some of these...
Rotary engines back again.
Yeah.
So this means probably the rebirth of the RX-7. Let's ignore the RX-8 because that was...
yeah, but fair enough.
But the RX-7 was a pinnacle of JDM.
It was a supercar. It was Mazda's best shot at a supercar. Oh, look, I'm a little bit sceptical. I hope it really happens. I mean, rotaries, they're not efficient engines.
No, of course they're not. No.
I mean, it would be surprising if Mazda were to do it. I hope they do because I'm a fan of rotary engines. And I think it would be... We talked about in one of our other segments about brand identity and these Japanese businesses, Japanese manufacturers having to create identity, and maybe this is Mazda's shot at doing that.
Maybe they were like, well, that was what was so successful back then.
Yeah.
If we bring it back with a bit of a new, updated concept,
Here's a thought.
is it going to be successful?
What if they paired that to an electric motor to make it more efficient?
Yeah.
That would be...
hybrid,
I'm all for that.
Rotary hybrid.
Yeah, rotary hybrid.
I'm all for that because that means that Mazda would have, like John was saying, it would have a identity again.
That'd be actually pretty interesting, wouldn't it?
Do you know what I mean? It would keep the rotary to live on.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in cars needing a halo, like manufacturers needing a halo car.
Yeah.
I think Toyota went so long with no halo car, and then they sort of have a halo car and they don't. And
What would you say the halo car is? Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, I'd say at the top of the hierarchy would be the LFA because Lexus is kind of the premium brand of Toyota.
But Toyota itself.
But then, I'm going to be controversial here and say the Supra.
Where's the own one?
It's a great car. Whether or not is another whether or not it's a Toyota is a different discussion. But us car guys kind of know what the car really is. But it's still ultimately it's a sports car.
Yeah.
And Toyota went for a long time with no sports cars.
I think it's been pretty successful.
I think it's been successful for their brand because I have one. To just
Put it
to be
out
clear, but
And to be clear, we all love it.
Yeah.
but I had a guy come up to me the other day who has whatever the latest Land Cruiser is.
So I would say that's another
Halo.
Halo.
But well, it is in I guess in Toyota's sort of who it appeals to. But the interesting thing I found was he came up to me and obviously knew nothing about Supras because he said to me, wow, Toyota builds such a good car after looking at it. And, you know, he's a Toyota guy, but he obviously, he's sort of more into the off-road stuff. Didn't know anything about the Supra. So I think it does have an impact on the brand. I think it lifts the brand having, you know, catering towards all niches. And, you know, Mazda having a halo car again, I would be in favour of it. I think it'd be good for the brand, and I think it might. Halo cars can sometimes demonstrate where the brand's going to go. You know, from styling.
It's a very good point.
To,
we can see that with BMW and Mercedes, because the Halo car from Merc is S Class and BMW's 5 Series.
And those, you know, filter trickle down. So, you know, if we see that happen with Mazda, again, I'm naturally a bit skeptical about the rotary just being introduced at a time when obviously fuel emissions. But like Sal said, look, if it's a hybrid,
they bring in some new tech and hybrid and whatever else, and actually make a modern, efficient version of this car, I can see it being
that'd be appealing.
Yeah, a pretty appealing car to the brand, right? And you know, I think we would all probably look at that and go,
looks amazing.
Yeah, but concepts never
that's true.
come to reality.
We'll see.
There's only certain cars that have done that in the past, but look, that could go, we'll be talking forever. But on to the next subject.
All right, so we've got a topic next to talk about, which is always one probably close to Sal's heart, but not too happy about this one, mate.
I'm not very happy where Ferrari's going at the moment, and off camera, me and John were speaking about, especially with the new F80, is that one thing that makes me really upset is you've got the Purosangue that has a V12 in it, naturally aspirated V12, which is absurd in an SUV, where all the other SUVs on the market are either V8 twin turbos or they're hybrids, right? Let's be honest, right? They went with V12, but then they put a V6 twin turbo in the flagship, the holy trinity, LaFerrari successor. Like, what the hell were they thinking?
Yeah, look, I think they've dropped the ball with that one. I think this focus on this pursuit of performance, no doubt the new Ferrari is going to be quick, but I mean, if it would have been a half a second slower to 100 or whatever with a V12, but made the V12 sound, I mean, that would have...
I think Enzo, if he was alive today...
Right?
I think Enzo was alive.
A much bigger legend.
And I think if Enzo was alive today, they'd be pissed. Like, he'd be pissed. And this is making me upset, because we're dropping the V8s now. And
so what's this? This is the 296. This is the current sort of entry-level mid-engine Ferrari.
Correct.
But now this is like the track version?
Track version,
And it's going to be a V6 twin turbo, because... Look, I know from Ferrari, what I've been reading from Ferrari, that the front engine V12s are going to keep being produced. They're not going to get rid of that. So I will give them, you know, credit where credit's due. They're still going to keep doing V12s. But what I'm sad to see is that mid-engine V12s are no longer happening. And like you're saying, John, it's just a disgrace with the new F80.
That was
holy trinity.
That one surprised me. I've got to say. I think, you know, a V12 would have made more sense in terms of even at the expensive performance. I kind of get it with this, because I mean they've committed to this platform.
It's probably right.
Make a hot version of it, right? Like they've committed to the, you know, that architecture for that model. But I think where it really bothers me is in the... I mean, imagine driving that. I mean, that's probably got a very similar engine to what's in the
F80.
The F80, which I don't think a LaFerrari has the same engine as a base model, you know, Ferrari at the time.
It doesn't make it too exciting to go, well, let's spend something special and unique, right? It's the same.
Since we're speaking about that, I was helping a friend this week because he's really keen on buying a Ferrari.
Yeah, which model?
So he wants to buy an 8112.
Okay.
Right, and he wants to buy a super fast, right? And I was actually trying to persuade him in buying an older generation Ferrari, because you're going to make substantial amount more money if you want to resell it one day.
If that's a consideration, sure.
So if you're not from Australia, I was looking at an F430 Scuderia the other day.
Yeah.
One of my favourite Ferraris of all time.
Yeah.
When they first came out, they were all mid-$1 million mark, right? Just over. Now they're going for $1.2 million. Reason being, they don't make naturally aspirated Ferraris anymore.
Most of the naturally aspirated. Yeah.
So... If you are, this is what I'm saying, so I'm noticing a lot of purists are buying old Ferraris. They're actually not buying new ones.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people still would argue the 458 was a better car than the 488.
100% it was.
A naturally aspirated engine.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not just our opinion. If you look at prices online, a 458, which is now several generations old, is the same money as a, you know, near current generation twin turbo V8.
Yeah.
So it obviously says that, you know, a lot of people like the naturally aspirated stuff. I think there's a lot of reasons why they've probably gone forced induction in the new models, emissions, targets, probably the leading thing. But, you know, I think the 296s are probably a really good car. I'm probably less bothered by the Pista being a V6 than I am in the Halo car. But yeah, I think it'll bring something unique to Ferrari. Their Pista models or their, you know, Challenge or Scuderia models have always been
pretty cool.
Have always been good cars.
Yeah. Okay, like I was saying at the start of the podcast, this is what's been circulating the internet, and
it's six. Look at it.
it's the Miata that looked promising from the get-go. It just got released to SEMA, and it looked promising. Everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's a twin-turbo Gallardo motor," and in fact, it's not. It's not even connected properly. There's no connection to the car. It's just an engine. It's pretty sure it's a Chevy V8 truck motor.
Yeah, Chevy LT4 V8.
Yeah, and with Lamborghini intakes.
I actually watched a bit on it. I don't know if you saw it, but he's somehow customised the
intake manifold.
Lamborghini intake manifold to go from, because it's a V10 manifold, to go into 8. So I don't know how he's done that.
Okay.
The turbos are not connected.
Yep, they're not connected, but not even the engine's connected. He rolled it into SEMA.
Did he? Okay,
yeah.
So what was the point?
To make a scene.
Well, I mean, we're talking about it. He's ended up on the podcast.
Yeah, that's the point.
Do you know what he's going to do now? All the money that he makes from all this, he's actually going to put a Lambo motor in it.
You watch, you'll be like, guys, it was legit.
It was legit. But I just think, like, why you do this? Like, you're going to SEMA. SEMA's one of the... It is the biggest car show in the world.
Surely, what did he expect no one was going to...
Notice.
Have a close look. It started a broader conversation about SEMA and people bringing unfinished cars there, though. I saw a whole thread on... Well, there was a thread with people that had identified cars that were sort of or in this case, less than 70% complete, and saying, like, should these cars be
That's a good
on
point.
display when they're not ready? You know, save it till next year, finish the car.
Yeah.
We don't want to look at your project in your garage.
Right? Yeah, it's like taking something... let's see something half complete, half done. Well, cool. I'd agree with that. Anyway, an interesting one.
No, I don't get it personally, but I mean, would be cool if it was real.
It would be cool if it was real. Yeah. But there was a car, just quickly, that was at SEMA very long ago, who put a V8 Ferrari motor, twin turbo, in a Mustang.
Okay, and it was running?
It was running. Okay. And then I followed, it's called the Corrupt Mustang.
Yeah.
It's got a 458 V8 in it with 2 turbochargers. And it's insane build. I watched the build through the whole process on Instagram and then at SEMA, and it was an insane car. That I think is mad.
Yeah, well, look, it's interesting when people do stuff like that. But like Jono was saying, bring it once you've finished it.
Yeah.
Do it. Everyone will go, that's mad, that's sick, exactly like you were doing when it's completed.
Yeah.
Don't bring a car that's
not finished.
Anyway.
Yeah.
On to the next.
All right, so on to our next subject here we've got, which I think's one that both of these guys are a little interested in and been talked about a bit. Both got a little bit of skin in it, I guess. But talking about some more EV news, I guess, here. That
BYD beat Tesla in quarterly sales again.
Yeah, so pretty interesting, actually. They're obviously doing a pretty good job of things. What do you reckon, guys?
So is that revenue or cars sold? Is it the
It's just financial results. It looks like revenue, yeah.
Yeah, look, I guess it's kind of to be expected given that, you know, a BYD is half the price of a Tesla. Cheaper cars, you're generally going to sell more. So probably a little bit surprising in a way, I guess, but I think when you think about it in a bit more detail, I think they're making good cars. There's no dispute about that. I don't think they're at the Tesla level, but they're probably appealing to, you know, people with a slightly smaller budget.
I see a lot of them around.
Yeah,
there's definitely over these last couple of years, I've been seeing an increase of them.
And they just introduced the BYD Shark into the Australian market, which is supposed to go head to head with the Ranger Raptor, and it's half the price as well as Ken.
Yeah. I guess that's BYD's fight is on price. You know, I think they're probably, in terms of value for money, probably offering one of the best, if not the best, EVs in the market. I still think they've probably got a pretty long road before they're as good as a Tesla. But yeah, what's an entry level BYD? What, 30 grand or something?
Yeah, 40 grand.
Yeah. I guess they're appealing to those people that maybe otherwise would have bought well, I don't know, like a highly spec'd Corolla or an entry level Camry. They're sort of in that
mid-range.
You can't even get a Camry for that price anymore.
What's a Camry, like 40 grand?
No, you can't even get a base model Corolla. Corolla, 35 grand now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a bit stupid.
Yeah.
For the same sort of money, do you want a Corolla or do you want a BYD?
Yeah.
Well, that's there's lots of people that would say Corolla, and I would understand why.
Yeah. But obviously, there's a lot of people that are saying BYD purchasing these cars.
Well, let's look at the numbers. I mean, they're pumping out the cars, but I guess the argument for the Corolla or any internal combustion engine car of a similar value, would be based on the use case. I think EVs aren't for everyone, but for the people that they work for, they work really well. I've personally gone EV for my daily car about 18 months ago.
Every time I talk to you, you're like, great decision, you love it.
Yeah.
It's always been...
I couldn't...
Yeah, look, it's always been a big positive for John. Every time I speak to him...
Look, off camera, me and John have spoken about, I can understand from a commercial point of view of having an electric car, especially the other day I saw a truck. It was electric, and if you're a company, I understand why you'd use it. And I think we were speaking about this at S&P, Sydney Motorsport Park, if you don't know this, guys, when we had the M5, remember? The 5 Series, not M5 Series. The 5 Series, the new 5 Series. And you were saying that, it makes sense as a business owner to have electric cars because there's less maintenance. People drive into work, they charge their cars, and they go off, so you don't have to pay fuel and all that. And I can get that. I understand that. That makes total sense. Where I'm a bit uncomfortable with electric cars, and this is where I go down, is if you don't have a house or somewhere like a place of work to charge your car and you live in an apartment block, especially that a lot of people are living in old apartment blocks in Sydney, right? You have to charge at a shopping centre. Now, every electric car that I've owned, I've taken for review, I've had to charge it at the shops. Walk back home. Charging station doesn't work. Charging station doesn't plug in properly. It tells you that you can't charge it to a certain amount because you have to move your car to let someone else in. It's very frustrating. Our infrastructure is not there. Yeah,
I think you're spot on for the use case you're describing, but I think where I would argue EVs are better is... I'll talk a little bit about my personal experience. We had an Audi and a Porsche. An Audi A4 and a Porsche Macan as our company cars. They were getting to the 4 or 5 year old mark, and sort of at that point, with anyone that's owned a European car at that age, you start to worry about if something goes wrong, what happens. So we looked at options, including replacing them with something that was similar. Ultimately, we initially went down the path of EVs was to avoid fringe benefit tax. So businesses pay fringe. They pay a tax on the personal use component of a car. That's why you see lots of tradies using
with utes and
dual cab utes. They're FBT exempt. You can use them however you want. You don't have to pay any FBT. So that was sort of what put us on that path of the EVs. Most EVs are FBT exempt, so we went down that path for that reason. But the savings have kept coming. So the Porsche and the Audi were between, I don't know, the Audi would be, minor service 1,500, a major service 2.5. The Porsche could be as much as $4,000 a service. There's no service schedule for the Tesla, so those costs are eliminated. In terms of fueling, we're spending between $100, $150 a week fueling the cars. That expense has been replaced by the cost of charging, which is much cheaper.
What are you sort of
what are you paying on charging it?
So this is the interesting thing about when someone says how much does it cost to charge your EV, there's no straight answer because so the plan I'm on, to answer your question, I'm paying 30 cents a kilowatt hour, and it's got a 60 kilowatt hour battery. So 30 times 60 kilowatt hours times 30 cents, I think it's about $20. So it costs me $20 to charge it. But if you weren't in a situation like I am and you're relying on public charging infrastructure,
which I was doing,
well, you could be paying up to 70 or 80 cents a kilowatt hour, which would mean that would cost 3 times or 4 times in some cases what I'm paying. But then there's also people that have solar, which are storing the energy in the car, and it costs them nothing to charge their car. So
obviously, just the infrastructure then to have done it in the first place,
right? Of course, but even without solar or without batteries, you can get on EV specific plans that charge your car at night for 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So, I mean, your car's effectively costing you nothing to fuel it at that
Well, I've got a couple of friends who've got Teslas, and all I ever hear from them every time I speak to them is how ridiculously efficient it is and how it costs near nothing to actually charge. And they're getting, they're driving the kids to school, they're doing this, a bit of work from home, a bit of that, and the efficiencies or the cost savings they're saying in comparison to when they had a petrol car
significant.
Are massive.
Yeah, it's massive.
And look, I can understand where you guys are coming from. Round town, short trips makes sense. We're not there yet with long distances.
I drive long distances, but
I'm talking about like proper. You're not going to put an electric motor in a tradies car. It won't work.
Well, wouldn't it?
No, because
how many tradies do more than 500 k's a week?
But you got to think about where they. I know tradies that drive non-stop all the time,
500
everywhere.
k's a day.
Yeah, well, where are you going to charge it?
At home when you sleep.
And what about when you run out of charge? And you're trading it a bit outside.
But this is the difference. So like
that's what I'm saying.
No, but what I'm saying is when someone has a petrol car, they fill it up with petrol and then they drive around for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. And if you're like me, the petrol light comes on and you go, I need petrol, and you find a petrol station. The difference is when you have an EV, you bring the car, if you've got the infrastructure at home, you bring the car home, you plug it in, and every morning when you wake up, that full 400-500 k's range is available to you.
Yeah.
So it's and look, you nailed it before. If you're having to rely on
Public system.
I wouldn't do it personally, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
Look, I see your scenario perfect. Makes sense. I get it because you got your weekend sports car.
Yeah.
And then you've got the electric car. I said in last week's podcast, I kind of can see the reality of electric cars, and they do have a place.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're the complete answer to everything where we're trying to save the environment.
Yeah, but the thing is, I didn't buy my Tesla to save the environment.
No.
That was like...
I know.
That's why electric's being pushed, right?
But that's why electric's being pushed. I know what you're saying, John.
But I understand that there's this perception that people buy Teslas because they're trying to save the environment. I bought a Tesla to save fringe benefit tax.
I love it. I love it.
That was what motivated me.
Yeah, but I think you've also realised that it's ticking some more boxes.
Look, I'm going to say something controversial here, and this hurts me as a car guy to come out with this. It's objectively better. It's the best car I've ever driven in a utilitarian way.
Yeah.
So it's. I don't think of it as a car. I think of it as a tool or a utility.
Yeah, it's a mode of transport.
But but here's the thing.
But that's fine.
No, but most people fit into that category. If you're you can't make the argument against the EVs going, oh well, they don't make a good sound and all that. A 4-cylinder Camry doesn't make a good sound, and that's what most people drive. So I think like in that utilitarian space where you get in your car and you drive somewhere, they're quieter than a Bentley, they're smoother than a Rolls Royce, they've got more torque than an AMG C63.
Yep.
They cost nothing to run.
Yep.
They've got the best infotainment and app. Well, in the case of Tesla, anyway, they've got the best infotainment and app of any car at any price, and they're not that expensive. So I think that's where the value in EV. There seems to be this perception that you have to pick a side. You don't.
Yeah.
You can go an EV is good in this use case, but it's not in that.
Yeah. But I mean, that's just in general.
I agree on that, but what annoys me is I understand where you're coming from. Sure, you're coming from a point of view where it's like, I'm using the car to get from A to B, right? For people that, yes. My biggest hate on this is the fact that a lot of people go into electric they think they're helping the environment, where they don't really realise the best probably alternative to come out, which they're working on it and it's getting closer, is hydrogen power.
But can I tell you something about hydrogen power?
That's
most hydrogens are EVs. They're using hydrogen, in a lot of cases,
Correct.
They're using hydrogen as an energy source to power an EV.
But there are some manufacturers that are actually making hydrogen motors.
I know.
Right? I'm not talking about hydrogen to power the EVs, I'm talking about full-blown hydrogen motors.
Hydrogen in general, I still think I'm yet to see it functionally work.
But I think
good.
that will be the future for complete efficiency, because electric cars in themselves, even when you are finished with them, they're still detrimental to the environment. What do you do with the batteries?
No, the batteries are mostly recyclable. The lithium iron phosphate ones. I'm in the battery industry, and the current standard for most EVs. Well, I keep talking about EVs, but I'm really talking about Tesla. Most Teslas use a LFP battery, which is a lithium iron phosphate battery. It has no cobalt in it. So all these people saying, oh, well, they're mining, these rare minerals and materials and stuff. they're not. Lithium's not a rare earth material. It can be difficult to process, but there's lots of it.
But then let me ask you this. So you're saying Tesla's doing that. Tesla's doing the right thing. But we just spoke about before how BYD's in the market.
I don't know much about BYD battery tech,
but
I suspect it probably is lithium iron phosphate, because lithium iron phosphate LFP batteries they're less energy dense, so you're not as able to get as much energy in a smaller space, but they last a long time. They're pretty cheap to manufacture. They're less damaging to the environment in terms of a manufacturing perspective, and the cells are effectively recyclable. So I think LFP EVs, I think my view is, and I could be wrong, but my view is I think they'll be around for a long time.
I think they're always going to have their place.
And we've said this. Yeah. Like, I think they will have their place. I don't think they're going to take over internal combustion motors like they originally thought. Because a lot of manufacturers...
I think they will.
Nah, I don't think so. No, because I think a lot...
I think it'll take longer than people think, and I don't think it will be...
There is a lot of pushback happening right now. A lot of manufacturers have gone back on their 30-year plan.
Some of the biggest problems we were talking about was... You can't have it. Well, I guess you can if we'd go down the hydrogen route, but we're going to run out of petrol at some point.
So, not if Porsche do what they're doing with their synthetic fuel.
We get to see if
and there's a lot of people doing synthetic fuel.
Yeah,
I think my view, and again I could be wrong, but my view is there'll be this mixed path where the people that EVs work for will have an EV, and the people that they don't will have a.
I think we're going to have plenty of options,
and that's okay. Yeah. You know, so I think there'll be demand for petrol for a long time. Yeah. I would challenge you to find someone who's gone from an internal combustion engine car to an EV as a daily that has the ability to charge at home. I would challenge you to find many people that would say, I would go back, because I wouldn't. Like, it wouldn't matter what internal combustion engine car you offered me tomorrow. If it's to get to and from work, I'm still going to choose a Tesla, and that's at any price point. That's legit. That's how much I love it. You know, I now view internal combustion engine cars much the same way I view a record and playing it on a turntable. Its fidelity is great. It's an experience.
Yeah.
But when I just get in my car and I have to go somewhere, I'm going to take the Tesla. In the US, they've got full self-drive to a level where you can effectively sit in the car as a passenger, and it's going to take...
So I can't do that. I
couldn't at first.
I love driving, and I love the mechanics.
But do you like sitting on the highway? You know, I use our level of self-driving here on the highway to take me to Newcastle.
Have you ever been... Remember the good old days, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
When you're sitting on the M2 in a manual car, and after sitting there for 20 minutes,
you
can't use your left foot anymore because you've clutched in.
Never bothered me.
For you, it might not bother, but for a lot of other people,
vast majority of people.
So I love cars, and I love the mechanical.
Cars too.
I don't think you love them that much. If you say you drive an EV every day, and I'm not saying you're wrong in terms of using it to get from and work. I get where you're, like, I can understand where you come from, John, 100%.
Yeah.
But I could not do that because I literally love the mechanical essence of a car.
Of a Camry?
But I wouldn't own a Camry.
Okay, yeah, but the thing is, this having the broader discussion about EVs, like, in my view, we need to stop talking about EVs and comparing them against M3s and performance cars.
It's a totally different...
I think he's right there. I think he's 100% right there. You've got to compare him with, like John was saying, you've got to compare him with standard cars or Camrys and Corollas. And I agree with you. Like, I can say this
You're
now.
trying to tick two completely
on
different
the
boxes.
podcast, I can say this. I agree with him on that. If you're buying a Camry or a Corolla or a daily car, why wouldn't you go the electric?
Exactly.
Like, why wouldn't you? But me, on the other hand, I would never go because I never would drive a boring car because I just don't like boring cars.
But, I mean, go and look in the traffic. Most people are driving boring cars. You know,
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm actually not a massive fan of EVs in the performance space, and that's I could be convinced. But I think if I was offered a new BMW M4 or a Tesla Model 3 Performance, in that case, I would actually choose the M3. I think where I would choose the EV always would be in. I mean, I've got a Tesla Model Y. It's ugly. It's it's.
We're talking about purpose, right?
Yeah,
if you're trying to have the purpose of you want a performance car that's engaging and whatever else, then why would you buy an EV?
Yeah.
If you're talking about you're trying to get from A to B in comfort and efficiently, cost effectively, EVs are ticking the box.
For me, yeah,
And look,
that's
I
my
think,
one.
we could probably sit here all night and continue this, but I might wrap these guys up.
We'll wrap it up.
Otherwise, we're going to keep going.
But that is it for episode 8 of the MotorMarvel podcast.
Yeah.
So
Thanks so much for coming
Thank
on.
you so much for coming on,
Nice.
John.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. To give everyone more insight who do consider buying an EV.
Yep.
John has come up with some very, very good points, and we can agree on it.
Yeah.
So
And look, I think anyone who's watching this and hopefully listening, we've got Spotify.
correct.
So if you guys want to follow, the podcast is on Spotify for us to jump on, have a listen to.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks again.
So thanks for liking and subscribing, guys, and don't forget to do that as well if you're new. And we'll catch you on another episode of the MotorMarvel podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.